You're listening to Relating with Jen Funk, where we are getting honest about the relationships that matter most. If you want stronger, more connected relationships with the people you love, you're in the right place. Let's get started. Well, hello, and welcome back to another episode of Relating with Jen Funk, the podcast where we are getting honest about the relationships that matter most. I am Jen, relationship coach and your host. And today we are talking about a topic that brings up a lot of emotion in people, especially in couples and especially this time of year. And that is money. You know, we are well into November now. We are fast forwarding into the holiday season. I know a lot of you have already started your holiday shopping. I've gotten a little bit done. My Amazon cart is getting really full at this point. And the countdown is on, right? You've got your family gifts and gifts for your kids and Santa gifts and coaches' gifts and teachers' gifts, and the list goes on and on. So it is definitely a time of year where we are usually spending maybe more than we normally would. And if you are not on the same page with your spouse around money and spending, then this can be a pretty difficult time of year for many couples. Now, here is the real truth of it, though. It's the holidays don't cause money problems, right? But they do put like this big old spotlight on problems that are already there in your relationship. So they just highlight them. So that's why I wanted to talk about this today, not to tell you how to budget perfectly, but really to talk about how to stay connected with your partner and how to come up with a plan, how to work together financially this time of year and also all throughout the year, because you can handle money and marriage in a way that doesn't create resentment and stress and anger at each other over what the other one is spending. It can be an opportunity to connect with your partner, and it can bring peace and clarity around finances. And that's certainly the goal. So I'll start off by sharing a little bit about my money story, especially around the holidays, because this used to definitely be a big issue for Casey and I. And again, we're not perfect even now. Money can definitely be a source of stress, but we do have some new strategies that I will share with you that help. But historically, Christmas shopping was my department. I was a stay-at-home mom, and so I had more time to do it. I was also kind of on the pulse more of what the kids want and need. So I would do all the shopping for the extended family and the kids and Santa and the stocking stuffers and all the things. And every year, Casey and I would end up in the same argument, like on repeat. So the problem would certainly be that, oh, I overspent. And then he would feel completely blindsided by that. And then I would feel really unappreciated because it takes a lot of work to plan out all of that and make things even among three kids. And then he would feel like I never even considered the budget. But I felt like, what budget? We never sat down and talked about a budget. And then he would be like, well, the budget's common sense. Why would you think to spend that much? And it was just the same script every December. And then it would bleed into January when the bills came in. And looking back on that, it really wasn't the spending that was the problem. It really wasn't the gifts or the budget, right? It was that we weren't acting like we were on the same team. Now, you could say maybe we were, because division of labor is important. There's a goal, and I was the one that did all the shopping, and he's a great cook, and we always host Thanksgiving and Christmas, so he would handle those responsibilities. So I'm all about a division of labor, but we rarely sat down and talked about what is the plan for gifts for the holidays? What is the budget? What do we want to accomplish? We might plan a meal a little bit better, but the point is we more or less were just reacting to each other instead of actually planning it. So again, the holiday season kind of exacerbated what was already an underlying issue in our marriage. Because any problems about money, it's really never about the money. It's about what the money represents. And it could be security or freedom or fear or survival or identity, responsibility, power, love. I mean, money can mean a lot of things to a lot of people. It's in our deepest wiring as human beings. So we have strong emotional reactions to it. So when you and your partner have financial stress and tension, know that you are certainly not alone in that. In fact, 1 in 3 of all American couples report money as an ongoing source of conflict in their relationship. And sadly, research also shows that the more financially stressed that people feel, the less likely they are to talk about it with their partner. And that is really a major problem. So, I want to talk about it here today and hopefully inspire you to want to go and talk more about it with your partner. So, every single one of us has a money story, and that is your beliefs about money that were formed in childhood, and then we carry them with us into adulthood. So, depending on your environment, you might have heard, oh, we can't afford that, or money doesn't grow on trees, or hey, we don't talk about money. It's like we don't talk about money, we don't talk about religion, we don't talk about politics. It just might have been one of the things you weren't allowed to talk about. Or spend it while you have it, or you better be saving because you never know when a rainy day will come up. And all of those things that you heard growing up as a child impacts how you feel about spending and your anxiety around spending or saving, and how you react when there is a financial surprise, like somebody needs new tires on their cars and you weren't planning for that, or just how much control you try to have and how you view debt or generosity, and certainly also how you see your partner's choices around all of those things. So you have two people that are coming together in a marriage, and really you're bringing these two very different childhood money stories, or potentially they could be very different. And then you're asking them to come together and cooperate and work together. And understanding this will hopefully help us feel more compassion towards our partner because we have more understanding. Now, one of the most common money stories that people can come into a relationship with that really can create a lot of stress, and again, it's very common, fancy word is the scarcity mindset, but really it's this internal fear that there is never going to be enough, even if there really actually is. So it might be we'll never have enough money, and never have enough money to retire, or there's never enough security, we need to have more savings, or there's never enough certainty or enough margin. And if you are a person that's impacted, if that is your money story, then the holidays are really a time where you can be very triggered, and it can bring all of that out. And you don't have to have grown up without having money or be struggling financially to feel it. It shows up even when a couple is doing well and there's plenty of money in the bank, because it really is not about the numbers. It's really about a person's anxiety. It's about their nervous system. Because when someone is feeling that anxiety and that fear of not having enough, then all of the purchases that are made feel pretty scary. And anything unexpected, like I said, the tires or maybe a random a vet bill, the dog gets sick, something can feel really threatening. So when you are in that state, then any conversations around finances can feel very heated, very emotional. They can become more reactive and more controlling and more anxious. So in relationships, that's a lot of where money conflicts begin, because when you have a fear of never having enough, it doesn't just affect how you spend, it affects how you communicate and how you are viewing what your partner's doing. You're analyzing all of their choices, and it impacts how safe you feel in the relationship, quite honestly. So once you understand what that fear is and what it looks like, then I guess the next question would be, well, where does that come from? Because people don't wake up one day and decide they're going to be all anxious and controlling about money. That fear is almost always rooted in early childhood experiences, your environment you grew up in. Was it chaotic? Was it unpredictable? Maybe it was the messaging that you heard, or maybe your modeling was watching your parents flail around and try to figure it out at the last minute. So all of that gets stored in your nervous system. And then without even realizing it, they follow you into adulthood and then, hello, right into your relationship. So this fear of not having enough can show up in a lot of different ways. It does not look the same for everybody. So for some people, it might look like, hey, we've got to tighten up the budget. And they're micromanaging every purchase, or feeling panicky when they see money going out of the account. For other people, it shows up in avoiding finances altogether, like not even checking the bank account, not checking balances, not wanting to talk about bills. Or sometimes it can even look like overspending and having an extravagant purchase just to feel a moment of relief or a minute of joy. And then, of course, that is followed by guilt and shame, and they don't want to talk about it. And then that cycle continues. So, when two people are reacting differently, if one is in this fear of not having enough and the other one isn't, it's so easy to misinterpret each other. So again, one partner might look controlling, but really they are afraid, right? It threatens their security. And then the other one might look really irresponsible when they're feeling really overwhelmed. So that fear doesn't just shape your financial behavior, it shapes how you view what your partner is doing and what their behavior is. So let's talk about if you are the one who can identify with this. Well, I guess I would say the first thing is it's great to notice it, right? That's an important thing to know about yourself. And I guess when you start to feel tensing up around money and around your spending, or you get anxious when you look at the balance on the account and you start wanting to control every detail and every purchase, I think it's important just to pause for a minute and acknowledge what's happening. Acknowledge that this might be this fear of never having enough. This is, here it is again. And acknowledging like this is an old fear. This is not current reality. Maybe do anything that can help you regulate your nervous system, whether it's taking a deep breath, relaxing your body, literally go and check your balance and be reassured that you still have money in the bank, whatever it takes to help your nervous system settle down a little bit. Another thing that's really important is to share this with your partner. Share your fears. You don't have to carry that on your own. Say something like, hey, I'm feeling that old fear come up in me again, and I just need a second to manage it. And I think when you call it out, it kind of loses some of its power. The fear kind of goes away a little bit because you've sort of brought it to light. It's not just left in there to fester. And then I think on the flip side, if it's your partner that is the one that is experiencing this fear of not having enough, when you see it, I think it's important to try to just remember that it's a childhood fear that's coming up and try to meet it with compassion instead of reacting to it with frustration. And I know this is hard because if they are the ones that have a fear of not having enough, they can look really controlling and really rigid and really anxious. And instead of challenging that fear, where you're trying to justify the purchases that you made or tell them they're wrong for thinking that way, or that's ridiculous, we've got plenty of money, whatever that your instinctive defensive reaction might be, the better option is to also take a deep breath, try not to be reactive, reassure them. That's going to go much farther than trying to argue about it. Just reassure them like, hey, we're in this together. I am with you. Can we talk it through? Can we work together? Can we come up with a plan? Just try to reassure them, because the goal is not to fix their fears. I don't think that that's possible for one person to really fix that in another person, but you can try to help them get out of this sort of panic state and this overloaded nervous system and get back into a place that feels connected, and remind them that they are safe and supported and that you are on the same team. So you can ask questions, try to engage them in a conversation that's very calm, and ask questions like, what part of this feels scary for you? And how can I help you feel better in this moment? It's really, your presence is going to be the most powerful thing. It's not a solution that you can provide, but your presence is often what will help that fear subside in your partner. So all of this is to say, this is really why having a shared approach to money matters so much. Everything feels easier when you start to work as a team. Those fears become less powerful, even if they aren't gone entirely. But if the fears are less powerful, then the misunderstandings are going to happen a lot less. So that brings me to the first step in creating financial peace and partnership and connection as a couple, and that is building a shared money mindset. Now, I'm going to give you 5 steps, and these steps work. So I really encourage you to listen, maybe take notes if you want to, but try to implement these into your relationship. So the first step, again, is to build a shared money mindset. One of the biggest impacts on a relationship that you can make isn't about logistics. It's really emotional. So it's moving out of that mindset of like, hey, this is your money and this is my money, into all of this are our resources. It's our goals, our decisions, it's our money. Because when couples approach money as two separate units, then it automatically, even though it's not intentional, it automatically creates yours and mine, because I own this account and you own this account. And you can feel like you're competing or comparing or keeping score with who paid more of this and who paid more of that and who did more, spent more, all of those things, even if you don't mean to. So when you shift into a shared mindset and you look at it like our money, then a lot of things can change. You begin to make those decisions together. You start planning things together and solving problems together and making any of those financial adjustments that are necessary. You start doing that together. So it becomes less about who spent what and more about how do we take care of our family and how do we plan for our future as a team. Now, that doesn't mean that you are sacrificing your personal freedom or having your own spending money. It doesn't mean that. There's certainly ways to set that up where everyone has some autonomy to have their own fun money. But it does mean that you are viewing yourselves as one team building one life together. And it reduces so much tension when you aren't looking at yourself like, oh, we're two roommates splitting up the bills, but you are two partners building a shared life. So again, the shift that you want to make is not about budgeting, it's about perspective. Now, another thing that can make all of this really complicated is becoming a stay-at-home mom or dad. I definitely can speak from experience here, because when one or the other person steps out of the workforce, it can really impact that person's sense of identity and their sense of independence, because suddenly one person is dependent on the other financially in a way that they probably never have before. So it can bring up a lot of insecurity or vulnerability for the person staying at home, maybe even some guilt. So then on the other hand, you've got the partner that is bringing in the income, and that person can feel this enormous amount of pressure and responsibility. They might even feel trapped in a job they don't like because they can't leave if the entire family depends on them. So that can be a really difficult place to be, and it can lead to resentment if that person doesn't know how to put that in words and share some of that with their partner. It can also definitely amplify all sorts of old money stories that you've carried in from childhood and trigger those fears of not having enough and making the finances become a much bigger problem. So having that shared money mindset and looking at it like we are a team, because you're both contributing different ways to the same life, the same home, the same family. It can't be his money, her money, if one person's home raising the family. That's a recipe for disaster. It really has to be viewed as our money, our household, our team. All right, let's go on to step number 2. And that is this money story I'm talking about. You have to learn to understand each other's money story and where all the behavior comes from. It comes from our history, it comes from our life experience growing up, every trigger and every fear, every reaction, every pattern that you see comes from that story. So I think one of the most important things you can do is to just ask each other, hey, what did money feel like for you growing up? What were you taught to fear or avoid around money? What were some of those messages that you heard? Or what makes you so anxious when we talk about money? And what do you value most about spending? And ask all those questions to really get to know your partner's money story. I think you'll be amazed at how much sense their behavior makes once you hear that story, because you might think your partner's really controlling about money, but maybe they grew up with instability, or maybe they avoid money conversations because they felt shame for not understanding things about money, or they overspend on gifts because that was the only way that they felt loved growing up, and now that's become their love language. When you understand your partner's story and the reason for that behavior, it's much easier to stop making them the enemy. It triggers more compassion. If you can stop assuming the worst in your partner and in their behavior, like, oh, he just wants to control me. When you stop that, it obviously makes things easier, right? Because you're not holding on to anger and resentment that might still be there. You can tell yourself, oh, this isn't about me. And then you don't have to take it on and go to battle over it. You can see it for what it is and then have a conversation. I know where this is coming from. Let's sit down and talk about it. All right, so let's go on to step number 3, and that is have a weekly or at least a bi-weekly money check-in. Now, it sounds super simple, but it can have a really big impact on your relationship because a lot of the times when you're fighting about money, it is oftentimes something that came up out of the blue. It's the surprises that get big reactions that are triggering for people. So maybe it's the unexpected Amazon boxes that keep showing up on the porch. I think Casey thinks we keep Amazon in business. Or the holiday gifts that were purchased that nobody talked about, or the bills that came in that nobody mentioned, or a random receipt that shows up on the kitchen counter. It's like, wait, what is this? It's those surprises that can create a lot of conflict. So a 15, 20-minute check-in once a week, every other week can prevent so much of that. It doesn't have to be complicated. You don't need spreadsheets. You don't need to have a financial meeting with PowerPoints or anything like that. You just sit down and have a conversation. Hey, what's coming up for us this week financially? Any surprises we need to handle? Do we need to adjust anything in our budget? Are we on the same page about our holiday spending and gift giving? How are we feeling about money right now? Take the time to ask all of those questions because that turns money then into something that you can connect over. It doesn't have to be the source of tension. It's something that you are coming together and working as a team, right? It builds safety because both of you know what to expect. And it also reduces resentment because it means that you're both working on it. It isn't one person handles all the finances, right? And assuming that the other person just knows what's happening in the accounts. You're working together. Both of you are aware of what's happening in the accounts. So this one thing alone, this one check-in, eliminates lots of fights about money. Now, step number 4 is create a budget and base it on values, not restriction. Now, I will admit to you that for a long time, when I hear the word budget, it translates to me, oh, you've got to stop spending, or oh, you're spending on the wrong thing. It felt very restrictive, and it means I can't spend anything. But that is not what a budget actually is. So a budget is actually a plan to make sure that you can keep spending on the things that matter most to you. So it isn't about restriction, it's about alignment of your goals and of your priorities. So instead of sitting down and being like, "Oh my gosh, what do I need to cut? What do I need to take out?" Instead, the conversation becomes, "Hey, what do we care about? Like, what do we care about as a couple? Do we care about travel or having experiences with our friends, experiences with our kids, our Christmas traditions, being generous and giving to charities or saving for retirement and paying down debt?" There's tons of things that you might value as a couple that you want to budget for to make sure that you can still continue to do all of those things that are important to you. So your budget actually reflects your priorities and your values. So you have to work together to create this. So I'll give you, it's kind of a funny example, but I'll just put it out there. My hair color is not mine. I am underneath this red. I am totally gray and I am not ready to roll with that yet. So I spend quite a bit of money on my hair color, and that is important to me. That's a value that I have, how I present myself. I've always loved makeup. I loved styling my hair. I feel confident when I do that. I feel capable. So my hair and having my color right is important to me because of how it makes me feel. Now, Casey wants me to feel great in the world, of course, but he also would like for me to find a less expensive solution to still feel great. He would like me to, spend $12, $15 to get a box at the CVS and color my hair that way, which I did for years. And I probably still would, except for this one time when I got the wrong color and I ended up looking like Ariel from The Little Mermaid. And my kids were thrilled, but it was scary. It was a very scary red, and I needed to go and get it color corrected. And I swore then, no, my hair is worth it to me. I'm going to pay a professional to make sure that it looks good. But the point is, this was all a priority to me. This is not so much a priority to Casey, but we had to work together and understand. And I had to be really clear on why it matters, why it's a value for me. So he understood why it's something that I'm not willing to negotiate on. I might be like digging my heels in about this one thing, but I am willing to negotiate in other areas. So I also love going out to eat, but I'm willing to not spend as much money going out to eat to make sure that I do have the resources to continue to get my hair done. So creating this budget is really a negotiation of each of your values. And if they don't align, then you work together respectfully to make sure that both people's values are honored. And all of that is to be said that when you're creating a budget, it's especially important that you create a budget for the holidays. Agreeing ahead of time to what your spending is going to be around gift giving or travel spending, all of that is so important that you create the plan and then you stick to it. That can save you so much stress and help you stay connected because you worked together to create the plan. All right, we are at step 5, the final step, and that is build a future plan that can protect your peace and your security. This might be building a savings account, creating an emergency fund, planning for retirement, getting life insurance, setting long-term goals for yourself, saving for your kids' future, like weddings or college expenses, and just preparing for unexpected life events that we can't control. None of this has to be fancy or complicated. You don't need certifications or some kind of advanced knowledge of all of this, and you don't have to figure it out one day in one sitting, but you do need to have some sort of direction to go in. And listen, if both of you, I'm really fortunate because I came into our marriage with very limited financial knowledge. I'm really grateful to Casey because he came in with quite a bit, right? So I defer to him on a lot of things. And I also am committed to learning a lot of things. Initially I felt some shame around the things that I didn't know, but I have tried to kind of dig in and learn. I sit in our quarterly meetings with our financial advisor, and sometimes I feel like they're speaking a different language, but I'm there and I'm learning. And I feel like that's my responsibility as a teammate. To be a good partner to Casey, it's my responsibility to at least have some kind of an understanding about what's happening. But again, I know a lot of us don't know a lot about finances and didn't grow up learning how to manage money, and that's okay. But as adults, we owe it to ourselves and to our partners. We owe it to our kids and our extended family to learn those basics so we know how to take care of ourselves, not to become experts, but so we don't place a future financial burden on the people that we love. I don't want my kids having to worry about taking care of me financially and physically, right? Understanding your finances and how to plan for the future and planning ahead is really one of the kindest, most responsible things that we can do for our families. So again, not unusual. If neither of you have knowledge, if this is not in your wheelhouse, that's okay. But there's lots of resources out there to learn. You can listen to a financial podcast, pick up some financial articles and read them together once a week, or meet with a financial planner. I used to think you had to be rich to meet with a financial planner, and that's just not true. Or go register for a basic money class, make a date night out of it, go to the money class and then go have dinner and drinks afterwards. It's just really important. And the main thing that's important is that you're doing it side by side as partners. It's shared responsibility. And that creates so much emotional safety, which is really, really important. Again, in a lasting, loving relationship, you've got to have that. So those are the 5 steps. And what I really love about them is they are not complicated. They don't require spreadsheets or finance degrees or anything like that. They don't even require, perfect financial discipline. It's just simple ways that you can stay connected and stay honest with each other. No hidden accounts, no hiding purchases behind the couch, anything like that. It's staying aligned with each other, having those shared goals, the shared vision, so that money stops becoming a source of tension and becomes a place where you can actually grow together as a team. And because it is we're right in the middle of the holiday season right now, it's the perfect time to try these out and practice them in real life. So, this is your task for the week. I really think it's important to ask yourselves as a couple, what do we want this holiday season to feel like? Emotionally, financially, and for our family. And I don't mean like, what do you want to buy, or what do you think we should spend, or how many gifts we're getting? Not those things, but actually, what do you want it to feel like? And here's why that matters, because how you answer that becomes like your guiding force or your North Star for all of the financial decisions that you make this season. For instance, if your answer to how you want the holiday season to feel is that you want it to feel calm, then that might be you're going to scale back and not try to run around and hit every sale at the mall, or you're going to simplify your activities during this holiday season and maybe stay in and watch more Hallmark movies. Or if your answer to that was, I really want to feel connected as a family, then maybe you are going to spend less money on actual presents and gifts and more on family experiences, like taking a trip together or just planning a really special night out together as a family. Or if you say, oh, I really want the holiday season to feel financially responsible and peaceful, then sticking to a budget that you create becomes an act of love for one another that you're honoring, and it saves each other from this panicky feeling in January when the bills come in. Or if you want it to be joyful, which is always that's my goal around the holidays, I just want it to be joyful, then you will prioritize the things that actually create joy, not necessarily the things that are super expensive, but things that like genuinely light up your family. So maybe that's baking cookies or Christmas candy together, or driving around and looking at holiday lights together. When you answer that question, how do you want the holidays to feel? Then the spending decisions kind of make themselves. You both stay aligned. And even if the holidays are busy and stressful, you keep your eye on the prize, right? You know what the goal is. So I'll wrap up to say this. Again, money is emotional, and it brings up old patterns and old fears and old stories, and all of that just gets a little bit louder around the holidays. But you don't have to navigate all that by yourself. When you slow down and you onboard your partner and you really talk honestly and openly with each other and you approach money as a team, then you can create that safety and that clarity and that connection that you really desire in your partnership. Again, not just in your finances either, but in your relationship as a whole. So I hope that all of this was helpful to you. If it was, I would love for you to share this with someone who might need it. Send them the link to the podcast. If you haven't yet, please leave me a comment. Let me know that you could relate to this. Leave a review. You can subscribe. You can hit the little bell that gives you the notifications, or like it. It really helps other people find the podcast, other people that also want to build healthy and strong and deeply connected relationships. So I just want to thank you again for being here. Thank you for listening, and I will see you in the next episode. Thanks for joining me on Relating with Jen Funk. To find out how we can work together and get free resources to strengthen your relationships, head to jenfunkcoaching.com and sign up for my newsletter. Till then, stay connected, stay encouraged, and I'll see you next week.